Good afternoon. I'm Aidan Sutherland, and today I'm going to describe and evaluate the negotiation position of the United Kingdom in the International Greenhouse Gas Mitigation Negotiation Process, or otherwise known as the UNFCCC process, and take into account the impact of the two-level game. Firstly, so that everyone understands what I'm talking about, I'm going to explain what the International Greenhouse Gas Mitigation Negotiation process involves and what the two-level game is. First is the International Greenhouse Gas Mitigation Negotiation process, which is a long-term objective of stabilisation of greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere. This is proposed to be done through implying that the industrialised countries such as the United Kingdom should take the lead in mitigating climate change, as they bear the historical responsibility and the specific needs of developing countries that are specifically vulnerable to the effects of climate change should be given full consideration. It is also suggested that a lack of full scientific certainty should not postpone measures to mitigate climate change, and that parties should cooperate in prompting an open international economic system that would lead to growth, especially in developing countries. This process, however, is not a legally binding agreement, and mainly due to US resistance, a non-binding compromise target for industrialised countries to return to their 1990 levels was agreed upon. Now on to the two-level game. The two-level game consists of politics at international and national levels. At an international level, governments seek to maximise their own ability to satisfy domestic pressures, and at the same time minimise the consequences for foreign developments. While at a national level, domestic groups pressure the government to adopt favourable policies for their own interests, and the politicians seek power by forming coalitions among these groups. Now moving to the United Kingdom's push towards emission reduction. The United Kingdom has a track record of being a progressive force in the negotiation process, and is certainly the greenest among the industrialised country players. It also has been a strong supporter of the Kyoto-style framework addressing climate change with internationally binding national targets for emission limitations and reductions, as well as accepting a long-term target reduction of up to 95% for itself by 2050. The United Kingdom also became the first major emitter bloc to put forward further reduction targets for 2020, which was an offer of decreased emissions by a minimum of 20% by 2020 and possibly to 30% on a condition that others would follow suit, but as we know, this did not happen. Now we get to the negotiation position of the United Kingdom in the negotiation for greenhouse gas mitigation. The United Kingdom has a negotiation position that is affected by both national and international factors, as stated earlier in the two-level game. The major international factor is that if the government enforces strong binding emission regulations, then it may shift production and jobs from the United Kingdom to developing countries, which would not only harm the UK but lower the eagerness for the government to promote an ambitious international agreement. This problem is one that could force the UK to rethink its strong stance on the carbon reduction targets and upset the game board with the dire consequences for the UNFCCC. This is because without the United States, the UK is one of the main countries needed by the UNFCCC to be able to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, with 55% of nations needing to sign the agreement for the ratification. Now looking at the national level with the two-level game in mind. The theory is clearly stated that domestic interest groups do not have an impact on the country's bargaining position in the international bargaining situation. However, there are many different political systems within different states, and it can be argued that more democratic forms of government lean towards general welfare, whereas less democratic forms of government are more prone to favour particular interests. Therefore, this would suggest that the more democratic the state, the less likely it is that the industries would be protected from foreign compensation. This problem with international unity may affect the UK's international negotiation position, as it may not be speaking with one unified voice. Overall, the United Kingdom's negotiation position in the international greenhouse gas mitigation negotiations is very strong, as the key thing here is that in order for the Kyoto Protocol to be ratified, as previously stated, the UNFCCC really needs to get the United Kingdom on board, as without the United Kingdom, getting the protocol ratified would be very difficult. This bargaining power could be used as an advantage by the United Kingdom, as it may choose to push greater allowances under the protocol, which could lead to certain advantages on an international level. However, If the UK decided to use its negotiation position to try and get some favourable results for itself, then it could also upset other countries as it may disadvantage them under this agreement. With the negotiation position of the larger countries in the negotiation process, it's easy to see why getting the Kyoto Protocol ratified is proving to be so difficult. It is also very difficult to see it ever getting ratified, as it is so dependent on agreement from the developed countries who themselves have the most to lose. As we all know, when it comes down to it, no country wants to be the one that is disadvantaged. But where does this leave the future of our environment? Now that is the question. Thanks for listening to me.